Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Yes, it's the Skeptic Zone podcast, episode number 489 for the 4th of March 2018. Richard Saunders here with you from Sydney, Australia. A little bit wet and overcast, but not too bad. Coming up on this week's show, it's Mandy-Lee Noble, the diet skeptic, back again with a report about, is food really medicine? Is it? Mandy-Lee went to a cafe, looked at the menu and nearly fell off her chair. The wild and crazy claims being made for the menu items. Makes for a good report by Mandy-Lee where she reads out the menu items and the claims, the health claims for the food that she saw. The diet skeptic Mandy-Lee Noble to kick off this week's episode of The Skeptic Zone. Then we catch up with an old friend of the show, Michael Marshall from the Good Thinking Society all the way over there in the UK. And Marsh will be telling us about the latest developments with the Homeopathic Hospital. A homeopathic hospital? It's one that doesn't exist, surely. What's this building? It's a homeopathic building. It's a vacant lot. Yes, you're getting the idea. The end of the homeopathic hospital. And it's been around for a very long time. And you'll hear Marsh and I discuss the fact that the Queen herself visited the hospital way back in the 1950s. Always good to catch up with Michael Marshall. Then to round off the show, Maynard. Maynard's spooky action in the pub. Maynard always has spooky action in the pub. This time, Maynard joined us and was part of the fun at Skeptics in the Pub for trivia, skeptical trivia. And what we're going to do is we're going to play you a couple of interviews and also round one, 20 skeptical questions to test your skeptical trivia knowledge. And if you like it, go to the Facebook page and say you enjoyed that or didn't enjoy that. And if enough people or even one says they enjoyed listening to skeptical trivia, we'll play you round 2 next week, which was done by Lara Benham, and round 3 the week after that with Maynard. But this week it'll be me reading out the questions for skeptical trivia in quick succession, so it's very tightly edited. And then after that you'll hear the answers to sort of see how you scored, or at least how you think you went. Been a bit of a strange week for me. I've got a temporary crown on my back tooth, which is really good because it means I can drink cool liquid now and not be in pain. It's fixed that problem. But the crown doesn't quite fit properly, so I can't chew very well. It's a bit of a mixed bag, really. I still have to wait another week for the permanent crown. Ouch. Skeptical dentistry. You know, there is a clinic or more I remember seeing at Mind Body Wallet festivals where they will take out all your amalgam and replace it with something else because of various pseudoscientific claims. Maybe this has given me an idea for a report for a future Skeptic Zone. But for now, it's time for me to run downstairs and eat something soft again. Marshmallows. Oh, marshmallows and hot chocolate. That's okay. While I do that, I hope you enjoy the Skeptic Zone. That looks good enough to eat. Or does it? Here's the diet skeptic, Mandy-Lee Noble.
Hello, Skeptic Zone listeners. Mandy-Lee Noble here, dietitian and skeptic, reporting from Brisbane. This week's Diet Skeptic report was prompted by a recent weekend away to coastal northern New South Wales, which included the obligatory Sunday morning breakfast at a local hipster cafe. Perusing the menu brought my attention to a food trend that seems to have become deeply entrenched in our cafe culture. in the place of appetite-inducing descriptions of meals and beverages once described in terms of being thirst-quenching, wholesome, or plainly delicious, there was a smorgasbord of health claims attached to superfood ingredients. As both an avid consumer of cafe fare and a dietitian, the one thing that is even more infuriating than having my breakfast reduced to a colon cleanse is that many of these health claims are just absolute piffle. So, for this episode of The Diet Skeptic, I thought I would list some of the menu items I found somewhat baffling and discuss their complete lack of plausibility. But before we get started, listeners, you may be surprised to know that many of my baffling menu items are also described as organic. So I would like to make the blanket statement that there is absolutely no convincing evidence that organically grown food provides any nutritional benefit over non-organically grown food. And with that aside, here are half a dozen selective items I have found recently on cafe menus that not only turn the joy of eating out into a dilemma of pseudo-health claims, but are also completely nonsensical. Number 1. Smoothie with organic spirulina containing literally hundreds of vitamins and minerals. This claim is literally ridiculous, as the nutrient reference values for Australia and New Zealand, based on current available scientific evidence and developed by National Health and Medical Research Council, include only 14 vitamins and 14 minerals and trace elements, giving a total of 28 vitamins and minerals or trace elements for which there is sufficient evidence to demonstrate that they are essential to the diet of humans. This is far short to the literal hundreds claimed to be provided by this smoothie. Number 2. Smoothie with organic coconut oil high in essential fatty acids. This claim leaves me completely dumbfounded, because not only is coconut oil not high in essential fatty acids, coconut oil actually contains no essential fatty acids. You can find out more about coconut oil in one of my earlier reports. Number 3. Coconut chai latte containing spiced matcha powder that increases metabolism. This one drives me crazy because in one way it is less than a remarkable claim that eating food increases metabolism. All ingestion of food increases metabolic rate by 10 to 20% for the following few hours. This is called food-induced thermogenesis and is caused by the processing of nutrients by the liver, not by the energy expended by the gastrointestinal tract. The processing of protein by the liver expends the most energy in comparison to carbohydrate and fat. This is where the claim is somewhat annoying, as this particular latte is made on coconut milk, therefore would actually increase your metabolism less than if it had been made on regular cow's milk. Furthermore, the matcha powder, which is a finely ground powder of green tea leaves, has not been found to have an effect on metabolism over that of regular coffee. Number 4. Immunity nutrient shot of cold-pressed turmeric, ginger, lemon, cayenne, and pineapple that is both immune-enhancing and sinus pressure relieving. This leaves me very perplexed, because the cause of sinus pressure for many people is hay fever. In fact, hay fever is experienced by 18% of Australians, and hay fever is caused by an overactive immune system. So even if the health claims made by this drink were true, for those with hay fever, any sinus pressure relief achieved would be countered by enhancing an already overactive immune system. This argument applies for all immunity-boosting, immunity-enhancing health claims. For many people, the cause of their ill health is an overactive immune system that manifests into over 80 different autoimmune diseases, including celiac disease, lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, Graves' disease, multiple sclerosis, and type 1 diabetes. Number 5. Smooth spirulina smoothie containing apple juice, organic banana, organic spirulina and ice that is claimed to be high in protein and a great source of iron. This drink of fruit juice and spirulina would contain virtually no protein. And while spirulina is high in iron when compared to other foods on a per gram basis, the average serving in a smoothie is only about 5 to 10 grams. It must also be said that the iron found in spirulina is non-heme iron and far less readily absorbed than the heme iron found in meat. Number 6. Aloe tonic and turmeric tonic that are claimed to be both medicinal and alive. Well, of course the terms medicinal and alive are being used as meaningless pseudoscientific descriptors. However, if we were to give the producers of these tonics the benefit of the doubt that they were both medicinal and alive, I believe that they would attract far stronger regulation from the Therapeutic Drugs Administration and Food Standards Australia and New Zealand. Finally, the claim that food is medicine is not only false, but it does a disservice to both food and medicine. Although food is essential for life, and a nutritious diet can reduce the risk of some diseases, food does not have the ability to treat diseases as medicine can. Similarly, food is much more than the sum of its nutrients. It is an integral part of our culture and provides an important means of social connectedness and enjoyment for humans. I look forward to the end of the food is medicine era, when cafe menus can return to describing food in terms of taste and eating experience, and not by the virtues of its real or imagined health properties. Thanks everyone for listening. General and evidence-based dietary recommendations for ensuring you receive all the nutrients you require for health can be found at www.eatforhealth.gov.au. And if you have specific dietary concerns, I recommend you speak to your GP or an accredited practicing dietitian. Bye for now, skeptics.
From the dawn of time, one podcast has unlocked the secrets of science and technology to enrich the lives of billions. And now, after a year where they've unlocked the golden age of knowledge, they're about to hit warp speed and go stratospheric.
Wait, hold up.
On Oh No, Ross and Carrie, we don't make extraordinary claims, we investigate them.
We go undercover with fringe religious groups, investigate paranormal claims, and we participate in pseudoscientific medical treatments and then report our findings to you.
And yes, we've even investigated Scientology.
Shh, Ross, shh. New episodes every month at MaximumFun.org.
Oh No, Ross and Carrie. They show up so you don't have to.
And joining me now, as he does from time to time, almost an honorary reporter on the Skeptic Zone, it's Michael Marshall. Hello, Marsh.
Hi, Richard. Hi. Always nice to be back on the show. Always a pleasure to speak to you.
Wonderful. About time we caught up. It's been a little while, and we do catch up quite regularly. And every so often, not for some years yet, I'm very lucky enough to fly up to your part of the world and attend the one of the better conferences in the world, which is QED. That's all going ahead, all full steam ahead?
Yeah, it very much is. Just literally, I'd say half an hour before you and I are talking right now, I've just got off a long 2.5-hour phone call with my fellow board members about what's going to happen in QED this year. So even though it's only February and QED is not until the 13th of October, we are already starting those long, deep, intricate conversations about exactly what happens and where and when and with who and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, we are back up to our necks in it all, absolutely.
You have to be. In fact, I can tell everybody that the Australian Skeptics Convention this year is at a similar time later on in the year, and the people, the organisers, are already very much into processing all the information they need for that and starting work on getting people and events and organising all that sort of stuff. It's a long process.
Yeah, it is. But it's if I think the events where people have put that amount of time and effort and thought and consideration to everything, those are the events that really sort of shine through. You can see that time go in. And whenever I've had the pleasure now of being at 2 of the Australian conferences, and I'd say, yeah, absolutely, that effort really does pay off in the end completely.
I hope so, and the feedback we generally get is people have a good time at our conventions and hopefully learn a lot along the way. But the reason I thought I'd give you a buzz at the moment, we were having a quick little chat the other day on just texting each other, and you said there was some interesting new news, if news can be new, I suppose it can be, regarding homeopathic hospital, is that right?
Yeah, so this is kind of the latest stage in our long ongoing quest here in the UK to rid the National Health Service of wastage on homeopathy. And I've obviously been on the show a number of times now talking about what's been going on there. And way back a couple of years ago when we first found out that there was £5 million a year being spent on homeopathy, and that was kind of our work that found that out. And then we started mapping around the country to see where we challenge it, and we started challenging it in the northwest and the southwest of the UK. And so one of the last biggest strongholds of homeopathy left in the country was in London, where there was this. It used to be called the Royal London Homeopathic Hospital, and I think something like 6 or 7 years ago it changed its name to the Royal London Hospital for Integrative Medicine, arguably to get rid of that quarrelsome H word off the sign to try and maybe not put that front and centre anymore. But we have this big building in the centre of London, right next to Great Ormond Street Hospital, which is a very respectable children's hospital, basically shares a very similar grounds with the homeopathic hospital. So next to a hospital that is caring for incredibly sick and ill children, you've got an NHS building that is dedicated to giving people stuff that doesn't work. And we think it was around about £3 million a year, as best we could tell, was being spent on homeopathy there in London, and that was something that we really wanted to challenge. But even what astonished me really when we started looking into where homeopathy was funded, and I asked every single one of the local health bodies, there was 211 of them in the UK, and I asked them all, how much do you spend on homeopathy every year? And we found that the ones in London, there was maybe a cluster about between 17 and 31 of them, depending on how we cut it. They said, we don't know how much money we spend on homeopathy.
Yeah.
We have no way of knowing how much money we spend on homeopathy. This was their argument. And I remember saying it on the show, I think, because what happens is there is a body in London that runs all of the hospitals, and one of those hospitals is the homeopathic one. So if you're a local NHS body, you give a bunch of money to the trust that runs all those hospitals. And according to those NHS bodies, they didn't find out from that trust how much of their money went off to the homeopathic hospital.
Wow.
And so we asked the trust, how much are you spending on homeopathy? And they said, we don't know, and we've no way of knowing. And so what actually turned out to be happening, it took many years of digging, but we got to the bottom of what was happening in this homeopathic hospital, which is when a patient walked through the door, you'd expect that there would be a record kept of every single treatment that patient got. Yeah. Because that sounds like a standard practice for a hospital. If you go because you have cancer, you go and see your oncologist, you go to radiotherapy, you go to chemotherapy, somewhere down the line, people are going to take note of what drugs you were given, what treatments you were given, and where you went. But that wasn't the case with the homeopathic hospital. They didn't take note of what treatment you got, just what ailment you had. So if you went to your local doctor and said, I've got terrible insomnia, I've tried everything, and I absolutely insist you give me access to complementary and alternative medicine for my insomnia, there was a little note that said because this was on the list of things that you could be referred to the hospital for, the doctor would have to refer you in those areas. And then when you walked into that hospital as an insomnia patient, you were an insomnia patient in every one of those records, regardless of what service you got. So you might get cognitive behavioral therapy, you might get reflexology, you might get homeopathy, but they didn't keep track of that. And that was quite, and they would say, well, it's very onerous of us to have that level of detailed bureaucracy to what we do. That's not how we work.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why they didn't take notes. Maybe they found it more onerous than, say, the oncology department would in terms of keeping track of what substances they give their patients. Maybe they just didn't have the time, resources, inclination, or expertise to keep track of those things. But one would argue it had the effect of effectively masking how much money was going on homeopathy, because it meant that if you were Islington CCG, Islington being an area of London, the CCG is the name of the health body, so Islington CCG there in London, and you send your patient off to the hospital for an insomnia treatment, and that patient gets homeopathy, but their records don't say that they got homeopathy, then you can't ask the hospital how many of my patients got homeopathy. So you can't then say, well, this patient over here got homeopathy over there. So there's effectively it became a black box. Which, if you were invested in keeping homeopathy on the NHS, that black box is actually quite useful to you, whether it's intentional or not. I mean, I'm sure you're not overly disappointed that there's not a lot of transparency there. So, as a skeptic investigator, I was actually pretty shocked that there was no way that anybody involved in the NHS in London could accurately say, or even take a wild stab at how much money was actually being spent on homeopathy. So this, to me, was a bit of a scandal. And it's not the only sort of scandalous element that we found to this, or surprising element we found to this, because the other thing we found when we were looking into every one of these different health bodies in London there was that they all had a policy that said you may not give homeopathy. So when you look at the hospital, they're all funded by these different health bodies, and there was an attachment to that funding that says you can't spend this money on homeopathy. Because they all had what was called an individual funding request requirement, right? Which is basically, if I'm a patient in Islington, one of the areas in London, and I want homeopathy, because they have a policy of an individual funding request, you basically have to get your GP to sit in front of a panel of other GPs and convince those GPs that homeopathy is the right treatment for you. And even if your GP is a massive fan of homeopathy, the chances are the rest of the panel aren't. So effectively, if you've got an IFR, it basically means it's almost impossible or very, very difficult to get something like homeopathy funded, because there is no good evidence that homeopathy works. And because all the bodies around London were saying that there weren't any successful IFRs for homeopathy, they were saying there shouldn't be any funding for homeopathy at all. So theoretically, there should have been no homeopathy going on in that building. Otherwise, anything that was going on was against the policy, against the law, effectively.
Wow.
But we knew there was homeopathy going on in that building because it used to be called the Homeopathic Hospital. And they also had the clinical director of the entire building is a chap called Dr. Peter Fisher, who is a homeopath, who is the Queen's homeopath, no less, who would go on TV whenever homeopathy came up in the news or was under threat in the news and say, I give patients of the NHS homeopathy in that hospital. Yeah. So we knew there was homeopathy going on. So that was a question that we had to start digging into. We spent a little bit of time digging into that. And then something surprising and very fortuitous happened. Because we have an MP here in the UK called David Tredinnick MP. I don't know if you know of David Tredinnick.
The name escapes me, but carry on.
Yeah, so he's a big advocate of alternative medicine, a big advocate of homeopathy and various other things. He once said in Parliament that surgeons refuse to operate whenever there's a full moon because blood won't clot when there's a full moon. The full moon stops your blood clotting.
Of course. Yeah. Everybody knows that.
Absolutely. So what happened was, in Parliament, David Tredinnick got up to defend homeopathy and to promote it, as he often does. And he said that homeopathy in London was under threat because all of the bodies around London had an agreement with the hospital, which he called a list of pre-agreed exceptionalities. That meant that you didn't have to look at any of the policies that says don't give homeopathy. And so we were very interested, because we looked at all the legal documentation about funding homeopathy, and we'd never seen the words pre-agreed exceptionalities in there. And so we asked the local bodies what that was. So I asked every one of the local NHS funders in London, what's this list of pre-agreed exceptions to your policy that you've got with the Homeopathic Hospital? And they said, we've never heard of this before. Right. I have no idea what you're talking about. So I thought, wow, okay, so Tredinnick has actually given us an interesting angle here. And so we successfully convinced one of the areas in London, Camden, I've been talking to Camden for years on this one point. And they said, right, actually, we're concerned that our policies might not be followed here. So we're going to have an audit of what's happening in their hospital. which means whenever we send a patient to the hospital over the course of a fortnight, I think it was, we track that patient into every different consultation they go into. We make sure there's a note taken of every single treatment they get. And it was at that point that they were able to then figure out how many of their patients were getting homeopathy. And at that point, they were able to say, right, and now we stop this because you are not allowed to give these patients homeopathy. And what they said is they found a widespread breach of contract by the London hospital when it came to homeopathy and several other things too. And it was interesting because one of the things they were doing, the hospital, it turned out, was you've got this list of things you're not allowed to give patients, this procedures of limited clinical excellence, this big list of things that the bodies have decided did not have sufficient evidence to be worth spending money on. And the hospital was looking at this list for the first treatment that they ever gave that patient when they walked in the door, but not for any subsequent treatments. So they were saying, well, this insomnia patient came in and they went for cognitive behavioral therapy. Is that on the list? No. Brilliant. And then from there, they went to homeopathy, acupuncture, and traditional Chinese medicine. But we don't need to check the list because we've already checked it. And so that's what was going on there. So we've now seen the documentation after this audit where the conversations happening between Camden, who then started representing all of London, to say this is something that is not just common to us, but common to all the London CCGs, all the London health bodies, that said, because you are widespread breach of contract, you right now are no longer allowed to give a single patient homeopathy. If you think you're going to give a patient homeopathy, you have to tell us first so we can tell you no. And at this point, this hospital no longer does NHS homeopathy. And that's where we now are, is that in London, this decision should have just ended homeopathy on the NHS in all of London. Now, we're obviously going to watch carefully to make sure that this actually pans out correctly, but just by following all this twisting, turning, interesting, boring, complex legal argument over the course of about 4 or 5 years through all these policies, we think we've got now to a position where the NHS has stopped doing homeopathy in all of London. And that pretty much eradicates it in the entire of England, apart from a little bit left in Bristol, which we're working on, really. So this was a long and slightly tricky story to follow, but the outcome is quite a significant skeptical win, I think.
It's just staggering news, Marsh. It's really heartening to hear that. It's such a long and winding road to get to these results and a lot of work. And incidentally, talking about homeopathic hospital, the homeopathic hospital in the Queen's Homeopath and all that, and I've just sent you a picture of the cover of a magazine called Heal, the Homeopathic News Review, price 1 shilling, from January, February, let me have a look, 1956, and on the cover is a picture of a very young Queen Elizabeth, and the caption says, "The Queen's visit to the hospital, Her Majesty presenting a prize to Nurse Beswick, a member of HEAL, H-E-A-L," and then if we go a few pages in, our cover photograph, the Queen's visit to the hospital, talking about the Queen handing over a prize on her visit to the Royal Homeopathic Hospital on Thursday, November the 10th, 1955. So there you go.
Wow, that's really interesting. So yeah, it's not just Prince Charles that was incredibly keen on homeopathy. Clearly, it just goes to show just how accepted it was in many places back there. It's one of the reasons that we have the Royal London Homeopathic Hospital, was because it was sanctioned by the royals in that way. That's an amazing picture. Where did you find that?
Well, many years ago, my great uncle died, and when we were clearing up his things, I discovered a box of magazines he subscribed to in the 50s, including this one called Heal. And I've got many issues of that. I'm happy to share those with you. And they're all from the early to the mid-50s, really.
Wow, that's really interesting. Yeah, and you've got there a little advert for Nelson's on the back of the magazine as well. So the Nelson's there on Duke Street, Grosvenor Square. I've been in that very Nelson's, and they offered me something homeopathic to stop me getting malaria. So think how times change and how they don't change in the slightest.
Wow, that's amazing. Because I'm just looking at the back cover, and it says by appointment to Her Majesty the Queen. There you go.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely true. Yeah. Wow, that's really interesting.
All right. Yes, I'll arrange to send you all the digitized scans of those interesting magazines from, 60 years ago. Marsh, great work. How can people keep up with the good thinking?
Best place to do if you go to goodthinkingsociety.org. You can see all our work there and subscribe to our newsletter, or you can follow us on Twitter, which is Good Thinking Soc. And we don't tweet very often. We're too busy, as it turns out, looking through the boring twists and turns of NHS policy documentation. But when we do get a win like this, we do try and tell people about it.
Great work. That's the thing, folks. Have a visit to the Good Thinking Society. We run promotions for Good Thinking quite regularly here on the Skeptic Zone because I think it's a good thing to do. Once again, Michael Marshall, thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Richard. Thank you.
Hey, Richard.
Oh, hi, Trish. Would you like a coffee?
Yeah, thanks. What are you working on?
I'm trying to come up with a new promo to play on the Skeptic Zone.
Who's it for?
The Good Thinking Society in the UK. You know, Michael Marshall, Simon Singh, Laura Thomas and that crowd.
Oh, yeah, I know them. They've been doing some great work investigating veterinary homeopathy.
Veterinary homeopathy? What, you sugar pills for cows?
I know, right? And also they're looking at some of the dodgy medical advice given by UK chiropractors.
I'll mention all that in the promo. Now, their website is goodthinkingsociety.org.
And they've recently been reporting on the resurgence of faith healer Peter Popoff.
Peter Popoff. Great. Okay, look, thanks for that. It gives me something good to think about.
Here's Maynard's spooky action at a distance.
The excitement is palpable, capable, optimal, suboptimal, obvious, ennui-ish, and other words that I don't understand that are based in a foreign language root that's not English. Maynard here, and of course the mighty Skeptics in the pub. There's a hush falling across the room now because there's only like two people in it, really. That's why it's so quiet. And Richard Saunders is over there. Dr. Richard Saunders, as you all know. He's a doctor of something. And Lara's there. They're discussing heavy stuff. This is how you make a critical thinking, skeptical quiz night. I'll be hosting one of the sections. Of course, mine will all be on the mastery of various anomalies. I don't want to use conspiracy theories because I consider that to be a bit of a negative term. Mine will all be about anomalies such as the Kennedy assassination, various research projects, ESP, a few other things will all be in my section. But there's actually people who are asking questions that know what they're on about. And who else is asking questions tonight? Richard, good evening.
Good evening. You are?
Yeah. But what credible people have we got on the show?
Well, the only credible person is Lara. She's just sitting over there.
Lara, you're pretty confident. Is there a theme running through any of your questions?
Not a theme, no, other than scepticism.
Oh, okay, rightio. Because mine are all like wacky stuff. I love it.
There's wacky stuff throughout, I think.
And of course, the one section that you won't be able to play at home on the podcast is the Guess All the Famous Faces. But I guess you could always put that up on the website, couldn't you?
Yeah, I could do that. Why not? We have 9 famous faces, more or less involved with skepticism, and people have.
You should pop that up on your Facebook group or something and see if people can get it.
Oh, I think a lot of people would recognise most of the faces.
Okay. Well, anyway, a hush again falls on the room as we prepare for what are we calling it tonight? Is it a skeptical quiz?
Trivia night.
It's a trivia night.
Skeptical trivia.
Took them hours to come up with that one. We had that in front of a group. We workshopped it. The people loved that name, so we kept it.
Here we go. Question number 1. The Skeptic, which Tim Menman is the current editor of. The Journal of Australian Skeptics was first published in what year of the 1980s? Question number 2. Which famous Australian racing car driver won the Australian Skeptics Bent Spoon Award in 1986 for the Energy Polarizer, a device based on Orgone energy? Question number 3. Fake news. Question number 3. Where would you find the Carl Sagan Memorial Station? Question number 4. The Nazca Lines are a series of large ancient geoglyphs in the Nazca Desert. and monkeys and spiders and shapes like that. They are thought to, by some, to be landing runways for UFOs. In what country can you find the NASCAR lines? Not NASCAR. America. I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, but anyway, it's spelled N-A-Z-C-A, NASCAR.
I think it's NASCAR. Yeah, NASCAR.
NASCAR lines, yeah. Where would you find the NASCAR lines thought to be ancient runways for ancient UFOs? What country? Question number 5. The paranormal claim of psychometry involves gaining information about people by doing what? Question number 6, and it's a multiple choice. Which of the following is not a logical fallacy? Which of the following is not a logical fallacy? Appeal to ignorance, argument from authority, argument from evidence, straw man argument. Okay, next question. James Randi. It's a question about James Randi. James Randi went on tour with which famous rock star in the 1970s? Seriologists are people who study what strange phenomena? Seriologists are people who study what strange phenomena, and I'll spell that. Yep, I'll spell that. Cereologists. Seriologists. Question number 9. The Bermuda Triangle is a giant triangle off the east coast of the United States with corners made up out of Bermuda, Miami, and what island? Question number 10, and we're almost at the halfway point of the round. Question number 10. In 1973, Uri Geller appeared on what TV program in the United States only to fail at every psychic test put to him? Question number 11. The Bridey-Murphy case involves what supernatural claim? The Bridey-Murphy case involves what supernatural claim? Is it ESP, talking to the dead, reincarnation, or witchcraft? One of those. Question number 12. Well, this is a question from Maynard. He gave this question. Here we go. In the movie Ghostbusters in 1984, what gets a clap already? What classic ESP test did Peter Venkman, Bill Murray, perform on his students? In the 1984 Ghostbusters, the original, what classic ESP test did Peter Venkman, Bill Murray, perform on his students? And we're up to question number 13 now. The study of animals unknown to science, such as Bigfoot, the Loch Ness Monster, Yowie, etc., is known as what? Very strange creatures. And here's question 14. Rantha is a 3,500-year-old spirit warrior, probably from Atlantis.
No, I understand what you said. I just don't understand what you said.
Rantha appeared to who? And the same person has gone on to claim that they are the channel for Rantha. Question number 15. Question number 15. According to most New Age references, how many chakras are there in the human body, or chakras? According to most New Age references, how many chakras or chakras are there in the human body? Question 16. Area 51 lays within which state of the United States? Area 51, the military base, and who knows what else, lies within which state of the United States? Question 17. Question 17. What do the initials JREF stand for? JREF, or JREF as it's known. What do the initials JREF stand for in the skeptical world. Question 18. Who convinced NASA to turn the Voyager 1 space probe around to face the Earth to take a picture known as the pale blue dot? Maynard did that. Question 19 is, what quackery is the study of the iris to diagnose disease? What quackery is the study of the iris to diagnose disease? And I think folks will be a little bit flexible on spelling, everybody. Just don't, I'm a terrible speller. Don't be hard on bad spellers, please. Unless it says Maynard or something ridiculous. Okay, the last question for round number 1 before the Who Am I? Susan Gerbeck heads up what skeptical organization? Susan Gerbeck heads up what skeptical organization? There's a lot of skeptical questions. Susan Gerbeck heads up what organization? So here's the Who Am I for tonight. We have one which is a tiebreaker. We'll only need in the event of a tiebreaker. The winner of the Who Am I gets a free drink at the bar of their choice, beer, wine, or soft drink.
The bar of our choice.
With the bar of your choice.
Now we got.
Now this is how it works. I'm going to read out the clues. Everybody can play. If you think you know the answer, raise up your hand and shout. Give your answer. If it's wrong, that's it. You're through, and we'll get to the winner. The winner gets a free drink. Don't say Richard. Who am I? Yeah, thank you. I am a fictional character born in 1964. I first came, and you have to yell outside because so I can, well, my spotters, can you make sure? Yeah. I first came into the popular imagination in the early 1990s. I worked for a government agency.
Oh my God, I know who it is!
I think I heard something, but yes?
Is it Fox Mulder?
No.
Yes, it is. You're wrong.
So, you're out.
My table is now out.
Okay. I am very interested in claims of the paranormal, although somewhat of a skeptic.
Oh, golly.
Give that woman a drink. Dana Scully. Very good. Now, folks, I think everybody's happy with that.
Was the end of round 1, and I wonder how you went. We'll be reading out the answers in a moment, as recorded by Maynard on the night. And at the moment, people are swapping their papers, going around the tables, and I think we're ready for the answers.
All right. Question number 1. The Skeptic, the Journal of Australian Skeptics, was first published in 1981.
I knew that.
You knew that. 1981. Question number 2. The famous racing car driver in question with the energy polarizer was Peter Brock. Peter Brock.
That's a sport.
Question number 3. Where would you find the Carl Sagan Memorial Station? You would find it on Mars. It's one of the landing sites of one of the rovers. Not Chatswood, as somebody said. Question number 3. The Nazca lions, the series of animals in the desert, you can find those in Peru. Peru. Question number 5. The paranormal claim of psychometry involves gaining information by touching objects used by the owner, like a watch or a pen or a wallet or something like that. Holding objects used by the owner. If there's an answer that's like that, that is correct. That's psychometry. Getting vibrations from things like that. Could you sort me out? We're up to number 6. Which of the following is not a logical fallacy? The answer was argument from evidence. The rest are logical fallacies. Argument from evidence is the answer to number 6. That's James Randi on the phone now, because the next question's about him. With which rock star did James Randi tour in the 1970s? Alice Cooper. Alice Cooper.
Yes,
Okay. Cereologists are people who study crop circles. Like cereal, like cereal. Crop circle.
We thought it was studying a bowl after you finished cereal.
Studying corn grapes. Crop circles. Question number 9. The Bermuda Triangle has corners of Bermuda, Miami, and Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico. Question number 10. Uri Geller failed on which television program in 1973? The Tonight Show, starring Johnny Carson, but we will accept The Tonight Show.
What? Or Johnny Carson?
Or Johnny Carson, we're flexible, yeah. The Johnny Carson Show, The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson. Yes, happy to accept all those. Question number 11. The claim with the Bridie Murphy case was reincarnation. Reincarnation.
I taught myself out of it. She must be so none of the ego.
Bridie Murphy. Number 12. In the movie Ghostbusters, the classic ESP test used was Xenocards. Xenocards.
Spelling? What is it? How does it go? We have correct spelling?
No. If it looks like the word Xena or Xena or something like that, Xenocards, that's fine.
I think it's
I believe it's spelled Z-E-N-E-R, but if it's an A at the end, that's okay. 13.
Very much.
The study of animals unknown to science, like Bigfoot, Loch Ness Monster, etc., is called cryptozoology. And we're very flexible on the spelling, as long as it looks like the word cryptozoology. Cryptozoology. They're known as cryptids, those animals. Question 14. Ramtha is the 35,000 100-year-old spirit, who is channeled by... Sorry about that. J.Z. Knight, J.Z. Knight, also known as Judy Zebra. J.C. Knight.
Much better name.
J.Z. Z. Mrs. Knight, J.Z. Knight. Question 15. How many chakras are there in the body according to most New Age references? 7. 7 chakras. Question number 16. Where would you find Area 51? You would find that in the state of Nevada. Not too far from Las Vegas.
Not too far.
Yeah. Question 17. The initials JREF stand for James Randi Educational Foundation. James Randi Educational Foundation. 18. Who convinced NASA to turn the Voyager 1 spacecraft around to take the photograph known as the pale blue dot? Carl Sagan. Carl Sagan suggested to NASA they should do that. 19. What quackery is the study of the iris? It's iridology. Iridology. And the last one, Susan Gerbeck heads up Guerrilla Skepticism on Wikipedia, also known as GSOW. Guerrilla Skepticism on Wikipedia. So please tot up the score, everybody, and write the score at the top of the page.
Hang on. We've actually got a listener to the Skeptic Zone. That means that it's the listener. We've finally met the listener. How are you? Wondering when we'll find you.
Are we on record now?
Oh, we are indeed, yes. Now, what's your favourite part of the Skeptic Zone? I like the bit at the end, just after Richard signs off.
No, I like the part when Richard is patting his cat.
Oh, yeah. Oh, and you like the cat noises and that
stuff,
stuff,
I like the purring. You can hear the purring on the radio. I'm driving home from work. And
calming?
Yes, and I'm hearing the purring, and I'm just
Well, yeah, I think there's plenty of it, because while he's recording the show, the cats, that's when they want to get on the internet and use the keyboard and everything, yeah.
Yes, indeed.
Oh, good. Now, how'd you go in the quiz tonight? Was the question levels about right, or would you like really hard ones?
We were leading after round one, or we were equal leaders, but we then...
No, you got cocky. This table just got cocky.
And we came down to just second last, so we avoided the wooden spoon by a few points.
And what was the question that just beat you all? You went, we don't know, we give up.
Well, I kicked myself when I couldn't remember the name of Ramtha was Jay-Z Knight. Because I actually met her when she toured Australia.
Cool. That's cool.
As a youngster, I think I was 18 at the time.
Oh, good skeptical.
No, my mother dragged me along to see her.
Oh, okay. Look, my mum took me to see Uri Geller.
Oh, did she?
I saw Uri Geller at the Civic Theatre in Newcastle. We got free tickets because they didn't sell well, so the radio station was giving them away, yeah.
No, my mother was a big fan of Jay-Z Knight.
Wow. Well, Tim Mendon, you've obviously ran a few quizzes in your time. How did we go here?
I think this was probably the third best I've ever seen.
All right. Now, you, of course, would have got the Eric von Daniken question pretty quickly.
Absolutely. I can even spell Eric.
Well, the thing is, do you capitalise the V or not? See, some do, some don't.
I don't think we should. I think we should have an agreement here that we don't capitalise Vs.
I was hoping that someone would get him mixed up with the Thalakis guy on Ancient Aliens and just write the guy with the big hair, because that would be wrong.
I always liked Eric von Daniken because he had a pipe which he never actually smoked.
Oh.
He never lit it.
He's gone for a bit more cigars these days, and he's got a lot of bling going on, and he enjoys a bit of a scotch.
Does he really? Don't we all?
Yeah, well, look, while he's doing his talk, I like the idea of it. I mean, he's bringing the bling back into pseudo-archaeology. Is it pseudo-archaeology? Is that what we could call it?
I think it's rubbish, actually, but yeah, pseudo-archaeology will do for the time being.
But he's always entertaining. Whenever he turns up on Ancient Aliens, you know he's going to be eminently quotable.
Absolutely, he always is. He's a wonderful gent.
Well, we should do this again sometime.
Absolutely.
Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone. And again, thank you to those people, those kind people who help the Skeptic Zone by contributing via PayPal or Patreon at skepticzone.tv. Thanks to your continued support, I'm assisting our new reporter, Dr. Paulie, who you heard last week with her maiden report. I'm assisting her in buying some equipment which she can use to do many things, including make reports for the Skeptic Zone. Now, I received some comments saying how much they enjoyed Dr. Paulie's report, although technically the sound quality could have been better, but, well, we all live and learn, folks, and it's an interesting process. Sometimes it's worth getting an interview, even if the quality, technically speaking, isn't that great. But I think it was a wonderful interview and a good start for Dr. Paulie. But for this week, this is Richard Saunders and Maud the cat, sleeping up there on top of the on top of my dresser drawers. I can't get her to meow at the moment because she's sound asleep. We'll try for next week. Signing off from Sydney, Australia. You've been listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast. Please visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for show notes, contacts, and to access the back catalogue of episodes going back to 2008. You can follow the Skeptic Zone podcast on Twitter at Skeptic Zone, visit our Facebook page, or leave a review on iTunes. You can also support the Skeptic Zone via Patreon or PayPal. The Skeptic Zone podcast is an independent production. The views and opinions expressed on the Skeptic Zone are not necessarily those of Australian Skeptics or any other skeptical organisation.